This one is diving deeper into what I think is really, really needed, which is that we have to really look for other tools, because I've been in the conflict resolution industry for over almost 45 years. I can't believe it. And, I've seen every way it works and every way it doesn't work. And I've been doing this for a long, long time. And when I first started being 25 years ago, I went to India and I met the Dalai Lama, and it changed my entire life. I didn't even know who he was, but I came back to Denver and I dissolved my law practice, and I moved to Boulder and walked into the Shambhala Center and tried to learn how to meditate. And basically, I came in contact with Rinpoche, who Timothy knows, and Howard Badhand, who is the spiritual leader for the whole Lakota Sioux tribe. And he's a spiritual leader, as are all shamans, and I consider Rinpoche a shaman. They are people that we go to when there's no other remedy, like medical science hasn't worked. They have other ways of knowing, and their whole purpose for being is to help people, to help their societies, to bring peace and harmony. And so they've delved really deeply into psychology, and they know, not only did they know psychology, they go way beyond that. They know the nature of the mind. And that's why they have no fear, because they know their mind. They're not afraid, that they know the world is their mind and that it's not really that real. And so I have called upon them for this talk and for this class, because and I'll tell you as we go along, you'll see this is many discoveries that came about through when I became a mediator. The first one was that every divorce mediation I did, I saw a pattern emerge, which is that people would come in and they would have this problem, and they were ready to divorce because they were so full of angst and exhaustion from having to work with this problem, and the problem was insoluble. And they spent a fortune and many years in therapy and still couldn't resolve the problem. And what I saw was that their dynamic was producing this problem. And to one degree or another, in every single relationship mediation I have done, I've seen this pattern where we give away our power, because what I've learned is that we don't know who we are and we don't know what we want. And so we go along and we give our life force, our power to direct our lives over to this external kind of reality, and we lose ourselves. And then we end up resenting the other side. And that's the dynamic. And so what I'm just going to take it from the top here is that what the wisdom beings say is that what we identify with is who we become. And what I've seen is this complete orientation towards a problem, and that we have to fix it, and that the world is showing us that, this is how our life goes. So most of us, we are problem solvers, and we try to make our relationships work through problem solving. And we point the finger at the other side, at the problem, and we try to change it. And we use logic, we go to therapy, we use blame, shame, whatever. And the problem is just a symptom of the dynamic. And when there's always solutions to these problems, but the problem will always resurface, crop up someplace else. And that, I think, is largely because we tend to think of the problem as something outside of ourselves, kind of like we do with not just our thoughts and beliefs, but sometimes our emotions become like external circumstances that we we want to avoid, like we resist them. We have to get rid of them like a boogeyman. But when we see that they're not really outside of us, they're much easier to deal with. And most of us treat our problems in our relationships kind of like, the symptom of a disease instead of going to cure the underlying disease itself. We spend a lot of time, on the surface of this. And even Carl Jung, who when he parted ways with Dr. Freud, who was all about eradicating the problem, the disease. And Jung found that inconsistent with a method for creating health. And he actually made the statement that all the greatest, most important problems of life are fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. And he said, this outgrowth proved on further investigation to require a new level of consciousness. Some higher or wider interest appeared on the patient's horizon. And through this broadening of outlook, the insoluble problem lost its urgency. It faded when confronted with a new and stronger life urge. So the problem is not the problem. And so another way to describe this dynamic is through kind of a structural engineering point of view. The dynamic is kind of like a fixed structure that we're mostly unaware of. And we have no idea how powerfully that dynamic just naturally determines the way we live our life, not just with our partners, but with everybody. It's kind of like a riverbed. Your life flows down the path of the riverbed because that's the easiest route for it to take. And that's the underlying structure of our life is exactly the same way. And if we are a riverbed and our riverbed, and I will tell you, this is based on science, the structures in our lives that have the greatest influence in our psyche by multiple scientific, which I'm going to tell you about, are our deep-rooted beliefs and concepts, the desires, the assumptions, and also our aspirations. And when we look at, a lot of us also treat our emotions as external circumstances. And so if we don't do anything to change the way that our structures are built, then our life is going to take the same direction no matter what interference we use. And it's kind of like, a way a building is constructed. We go in the front door, we go up the elevator, we turn right, we don't jump through the walls. Structure has a really strong influence, and that is what our minds are structured with. So these are kind of like retaining walls. And shamans have for thousands of years, told us that our world is a reflection of what we believe. And it's based on our subjective perceptions, which are based on concepts and thoughts accumulated over time, and then we believe them. So now we have multiple fields of science adopting these shamanic principles: cognitive science, neuroscience. There's science done on the placebo effect, which shamans originated. And it confirms that, tons of research on this, that our beliefs and expectations physically affect the body, physically. And that, these cognitive theories say that fundamentally, our reality is shaped by our perceptions, and our interactions and experiences are based on our concepts, and that they influence us to act and even affect our physical systems. Like psychoneuroimmunology, they have lots of research. Then they confirm that our mindset and our beliefs are what caused stress, and that stress influences the immune system and our health outcomes. And think of our cultural realities, our beliefs and our concepts about money, law, institutions. They only exist based on concepts, yet they materially structure our lives. So this is why seeing the dynamic is, I feel, the most pressing and fundamental issue for us to see, because it has the potential to wake us up to what's running our life. And it's really sometimes the first and then the best and the only opportunity we have ever had to really see what we think about ourselves and other people. The mirror of the relationship shows us what we think about ourselves and what we think about the other person. And so there are many people that speculate as to why this is the case, that we have this kind of problem-solving view of looking outward. And, maybe you can relate with, the upbringing. Like when we were growing up, we assume that all the big people have all the answers to how the world works, right? And then later on, we see that, oh, maybe they were not always accurate. Maybe they were unjust or unfair some of the times, or even downright dishonest. They told us that they could tell when we were lying because we had a blue tongue, or, we were going to go to hell because we're lying about the ice cream in the refrigerator. And somehow we knew this wasn't accurate, However we grew up, we're always in search for the right way to do things, the right formula, the right rule of thumb, the right template, the right standard of care. And then we're safe and we'll be rewarded by our parents and our teachers for having the right response to the circumstance. And we become problem solvers, and all the circumstances of our life hold the power to dictate the right response because they're real, and we give them our power. So the dynamic is really an example of the insanity of this. We keep having the same fight, we keep doing the same things, we keep knocking our head against the wall, and nothing changes. So, if the icon of psychology, Carl Freud, or Jung, and science and the wisdom traditions are all saying this, that you have the wrong focus, why do we continue this? I mean, and this is what I've realized from doing conflict resolution for as long as I've done, and now I'm in marriage mediation. It's even when my clients in marriage mediation do the work and they see the dynamic and the light bulb goes on and they go, oh my God, I've been giving away my power. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to stop caretaking. I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to be hard to get, or I'm going to rebel. What happens is, because it's a structure that is in place, basically, that all these efforts that we make to try to change it are going against the grain. It's kind of like, if I had a big rubber band around my right waist stretching to that wall, and I had a big rubber band around my left waist stretching to this wall, and this wall represents what I want, and this wall says, hey, all your conditioning is saying you don't believe that you can have what you want, that you are unworthy. So, what happens when I go towards this wall? This rubber band gets looser, but the one on the back wall gets really tight. So even if I got all the way to this wall, I'm not going to be able to hold this. I'm going to be back to the other side. And that's how our dynamic oscillates all the time. It doesn't get us where we want to go. So this is where the wisdom traditions come in, and this is why I've asked for help on this, because even when people do everything, they take the space, they get the ahas, they reflect, they contemplate, they see that, oh, I see my underlying issue, and the reason I'm giving away my power and expecting him to change is because maybe I have ambivalence about a relationship, or maybe I had an incomplete relationship with my father, or whatever it is. Even when they get that, they still go back and forth, and they still think they can fix it, and they're still trying to fix it. So, what the wisdom traditions say, and this is, most of us don't really keep up with neuroscience, and we don't really have any faith in something that's non-material. In the West, we are very materialistic, and if we can't see it, we don't believe it. And it's like when we used to believe the world was flat or something, it's like we go along with our cultural kind of conditioning always. But the shamans, look crazy because they can do miraculous things. And what they teach us is, that they have this view of sanity in a way. It's kind of like a transparent view that just cuts through all these kind of psychological norms and emotionalism, and they know how to relate properly with the world. And the reason they know this is because they have torn down those retaining walls in their own minds, and they have methods to help us do that. And so that's why we apply the wisdom traditions, because that is the only source I find that knows how to re-engineer a riverbed. So this course is not about becoming a Buddhist or a shaman. However, it is about revealing who you are, which is a shaman. Shamans do magic, and you can too, because you will see once you understand how the mind works, it's magic. So if I refer to shamanism throughout this talk, I'm referring to two spiritual leaders that are shamans. Shamans go by medicine man, spiritual leaders, whatever. And they are people who commit and dedicate their life to helping people. And they do it in ways that are based on other ways of knowing that we just can't understand. And they are often people who have learned to cure themselves of incurable predicaments. And they can turn your head, they can wiggle your toe, they can read your mind, they can tell your future, they can tell your past. They are so close to the earth and the elements that really the phenomenal world is really all they need to be able to know what's happening. And so I'm going to take us through a little definition of the dynamic so that we can do an example that I'm going to ask you about, so that I'm going to make sure you understand. Okay. So if the definition of the dynamic is, and we want to be able to recognize it in our relationships. And in level 1, I'm going to model a dynamic with some people that have volunteered. And so realize now, this is what I have seen in every single case, and I'm going to define it. The dynamic is trying to change someone, wanting them to be different, or to treat us differently, wanting our partner to give us what we are missing, which is wishing to be made whole. So part of this is that we see them as having the power to do this, and that we don't have the power. And they have the power to make us happy and sad, or fulfilled or miserable. And so in this dynamic, our actions are like defensive, they're preemptive, they're strategic. To name a few, we please, we appease, we pacify, we go along, we assume things, we try to wake them up, we interrogate them, we argue with them, we try to fix them. And ultimately, the last step in this is pin the tail on the donkey, and we blame them for our misery. And blaming comes last, because this is after you've gone around and around and become totally exhausted, because you can't fix the problem, And so basically, these are strategies which are manipulations. And if you've gotten to this point, it's desperation, because this is not the point of a relationship. The point of a relationship is not to manage somebody or fix them or try to get something from them that you don't have. That can only come from us. So let's dissect this. So here's the exercise. Let's say you're in a relationship with somebody, and you think that your partner he's not meeting your needs, or he doesn't appreciate you, or she doesn't treat you the way you want to be treated, or love you the way you want to be loved, and you're not happy. So what does this say about your belief structure, who you are in this dynamic? Anybody have an answer?
It's Lindsay. I have an answer.
Hey, Lindsay.
It means that we are allowing someone else to be in charge of our happiness or unhappiness.
Beautiful. There's 2 parts to it. That's part 2. Very good. Very excellent. That was the hardest part to get, actually. Anybody else? I'll tell you the answer. It says that I am not worthy of respect. If you keep trying to get respect and you're in this relationship, what does it say? I am not worthy of respect. Howard used to say, if you show it to yourself, the world will see it. And this is kind of the orientation that Lindsay just talked about. It's the half empty belief that our circumstances are more powerful and that we need to manipulate them and, you know, beg and please, and this will help us to feel respected and worthy. And often we want people to treat us in ways that we don't even treat ourselves, you know? And this is who we become, is what we identify with. And so we remain powerless, we are helpless, we are stuck, and we are the victim of our circumstances. So we either going to become lion tamers or very sophisticated mouse in a maze, you know, where the circumstances are the walls. And that's really what it comes down to. So what do we do? This is the last question, and then you don't have to answer any more questions. What do we do when we're caught in one of these power, you know, problem-solving codependent episodes? You know, we're fighting with our spouse, we're not getting what we want, he's insensitive to us, we feel like we need to like rebel or punch him or something. What do we do in those circumstances? Nobody will know this. I've had to do it myself. We walk away. Not that this is a permanent strategy, not at all. It's we walk away, because what do we say when we walk away? We say we're showing respect to ourselves. If we keep fighting for it, you know, if you have to be a mudslinger, you know, that is not respectful to yourself. So, and unless we show it to ourselves, it will be endless. You know, we can never get enough of it from outside. You know, if we always need an external confirmation, we are victims. So what do the wisdom traditions say about this? Okay, hexagram 1, the I Ching. Now we're going to go into Taoism, and I'm not going to do a philosophical overview about this, but I did study the I Ching with Howard Badhand for 15 years. Hexagram 1 has the answer. Let go of everything that is inferior, degrading, outmoded, and outdated. And underneath that is the great man. Okay. This is very similar to warriorship, where we rise above the negativity. You know, we can't live in a toxic soup and mudsling and expect to give and receive love, which is the point of a relationship. So, you know, from a warriorship perspective, if we have any enemies, we're not a warrior. You know, a warrior, the world is a friend to the warrior. So how do we get from all this negativity, and how many culpas is it going to take us to download all of our conditioning? So this is hexagram 36. I think is really important to notice, is that, believe it or not, you're not going to believe this, but what we have to do is not fight it, not brand it, not, you know, run from it. We have to make energetic progress towards the good. If you look at hexagram 36, it's all about the dark and the evil forces, and how if you give it your power, that's how it comes into existence. It needs the light in order to exist. And so you can't change negativity by fighting with it. Fighting changes positivity into negativity. Evil cannot exist without it being branded or challenged, or shown a light on. So, you know, the hexagram is actually called preponderance of the dark. And when evil predominates, the advice for the superior man is to hide your light, because there's nothing you can do when it's predominant, right? So how do we go to let go of all this outmoded, outdated stuff by making energetic progress towards the good. So what we're going to do, if you were in any spiritual path, it would be a long process of creating causes, of planting good seeds. And, if you're really good in this life, then you're going to go to heaven, that kind of thing. But what we have here with a shamanic teaching, and I have permission from Rinpoche to actually say this, that we are going to receive teachings from the wisdom traditions of the highest path of Tantra, which is shamanic. They're one and the same. And that view is the ultimate view that our happiness and our personal evolution is not something that we will get in the future, that we've worked really hard to get. It's right here, right now. Heaven is now. And we're all gods and goddesses. And the method for incorporating this is that we're going to be true to who we really are. And we're going to basically tear down the retaining walls that have all these lifetimes of conditioning and programming. And it's going to be quick, because we're making energetic progress towards the good. And how can this be? So I know it's hard. It's so hard for most of us to believe that, we have so many limiting beliefs, and it's impossible to believe that in actuality, we are a god or a goddess, but it's actually true. It's more true than what you think about yourself right now. It is true. So by how we make the energetic progress towards the good is, in the tantric tradition, we use what's called pure perception. And that is also true in the Lakota warriorship shamanistic traditions. He used to always say, Howard, always say, every other was mantra, look for the good, look for the good, look for the good. And basically, pure perception is becoming who you are, which is the creative force in your own life. And that is what hexagram 1 is saying. So we could go back and use cause and effect and try to create really good causes, but this is not, this path supersedes cause and effect. Pure perception is not created by concepts that are impure. It's created by our wisdom mind. And when you practice this, you start to have faith, and the faith in who you are will start to make you see your reality in a much, much brighter, clearer way, because you won't be burdened with all these beliefs and concepts that really, really, really weigh us down. So if we can find and become the highest octave of who we truly are, we already have all the good qualities, all the noble qualities. We have all the richness in the world. And when we look through the eyes of this being, we are inseparable from our world. And the shamans call this, you're not the concrete me, you are the context me. You are everything. So the more we can identify with which I'm going to call archetype, the more we become our true selves. And it's promised that the more loving and kind we become. And it's not creating anything. It is actually revealing something. And this is really important, that we're not pretending to be something like Mick Jagger or Michael Jackson or a spring flower. We're not pretending to just visualize something. We're using our sixth consciousness and not the conceptual mind to actually create a pure being. And I have the teaching to do this with all of us. And so in the language of psychology, archetype is something that mobilizes psychic energy. Something new takes place and crystallizes. It's growth from one state to another. The change is always from the lesser to the greater. And archetypes produce transformation. And the beauty of it is the ego cannot defend against the activation of an archetype. It must write it out. So an example of this is the archetype of death. When that constellates in our psyche, it changes our whole relationship to our life itself. It's really an intense purification of all the attitudes that that are not congruent with what it now wants to feel, and there's tremendous pressure in the psyche to grow, and we're not even concerned anymore about the degradation of our body. It's powerful. That's a archetype. Pregnancy is an archetype. Getting married is an archetype. Bat mitzvahs, bar mitzvahs, getting divorced is kind of the same thing. So the key is that this archetype is going to make us less possessed by our emotions and self-fulfilled, and less, you'll see the belief about the reality of the external world is not going to have a grip on us like it used to have. So the exercise that, is going to eliminate all this disbelief in our ability to do this is really a profound one. And I'm not going to go into it right here, but just know this is what we're going to do in level 1, that you are going to become who you are. And, Howard used to say that he did not decide to become a medicine man. He was a medicine man, and he chose to be true to who he was. This is what we're going to be doing. We're not going to decide to become somebody else, and we're not choosing. We are choosing to be true to ourselves. So that archetype will then take form in our subtle body, and it will actually help us to create what we want to create. But the most incredible effect is that we become so embodied, and our self-image is what makes us successful at anything we do, whether it's health or, career. And we're going to see a whole new method for how we will be in our lives. We're not going to be viewing the world as a problem to be fixed, but a kingdom to rule over. And what are we going to use to do that, to rule over our kingdom? It is the creative process, which is the opposite of the problem-solving process. So level 2 is packed with intense stuff that I got from my discoveries and watching people in the dynamics. And I'm not going to go over these in a lot of detail because we've already done those before. But what one of the first discoveries after the dynamic I realized is that whatever the issue was on one side, it was the same on the other side, only for different reasons. And I couldn't figure this out because I wasn't a therapist. I was like, why? It's like he's coming in and he says she's going to try to manipulate him, and then she comes in and she says he's going to try to it's like, well, who, and they're both right. And so what we find out is that not only are both parties giving their power to each other and not realizing they're doing it and resenting each other, but they're creating it. But we also, once we see that dynamic, we can see that our partner actually is reflecting what we believe about ourselves. And that, we may have picked them because they felt simpatico, or we may feel that our partner resembles our difficult parent, But what we can do now with this insight is that we don't try to make them different in order for us to feel like we're loved. We don't need that now because we're creating what we want. But the most profound discovery, these discoveries are continuing to happen, is this, that, as we said, in level 1, you realize that, we have all these concepts and beliefs, and they form who we think we are, and they kind of dictate what we think of the other person. And part of these concepts and beliefs that we have are stored, they're like a storage tank. We call this the 8th consciousness or whatever, but emotions are part of those, are stored as well. And they are the ones that have the most power to do what I'm going to tell you. are the ones that are unexpressed, unresolved, have gone underground, and we are resisting them. They have become external circumstances that we have given our power to. We're afraid of them. We will avoid them like the plague. We suppress them. But what ends up happening is we act out of them, or we react from them. And so, like we've seen, circumstances are things that we feel make us feel some way. Something made us feel mad, something made us anxious. But from the wisdom traditions, we know that there's nothing out there, to cause these kind of reactions. There's only projections of mind. And from the shamanic view, what passes for reality is like a big screen, that reflects back to us everything we believe to be true. So it's really futile to try to manipulate our projections. It's like putting your hand in front of a film projector or screaming at the actors in a play. It doesn't really do anything. And science actually backs this up, as we have discussed. So psychologists and social scientists know that the conditioning and behavioral patterns that we all have are observable. And I guess I haven't told you about this. So multiple scientific fields are demonstrating that the thoughts we think are to some degree programmed by our conditioning, and they operate by stimulus and response. So these fields, like take cognitive science. Cognitive science is showing that the brain constructs reality. It does not passively receive reality, but it constructs reality through interpretation. And it shows that the brain uses sensory input and combines it with past experiences, expectations, and concepts to create a mental model of the world. And neuroscience says the same thing, that the brain is a predictive machine. It constantly uses concept and prior knowledge to predict sensory input and future input. So what we're experiencing as reality is really the brain's best guess for what is happening. So as I said before, the shamans have the answer to all of this. And the shamans have said that thoughts are like little prayers that go out, that they are really, this is something I never knew, and I wish they had told us this before, Timothy, but but basically we're not generating those thoughts. Those thoughts, believe it or not, are out there in the field, and they form in clusters, in groups that are based on similarity, like everything else, like birds of a feather flock together. And they've been thought by billions of people over thousands of generations, and mostly they're ego thoughts, which are thoughts of separation, alienation, fear, attack, misery, all these kinds of things that just perpetuate this dream that we're all sharing, right? So shamans always say, nothing is as it appears. We must look beyond appearances, beyond our assumptions, and beyond our identifications, to be free, to be at peace, to be in harmony, because the nature of the mind is the same as the nature of reality. And it's the only thing that is real and permanent and is not subject to change. And it is an inexhaustible source of wisdom and compassion. And that's why all the wisdom traditions have as their goal to realize the nature of the mind, because it's beyond all these appearances. It's not a subjective reality. And it makes us happy and sane. And, we'll go into this in more detail. But we've untapped this gold mine that we're sitting on. And it's why all the wisdom beings call it, our mind, a wish-fulfilling jewel. So back to this emotion that I was telling you about, which becomes an external circumstances. So like we're conditioned to believe that our programming tells us that there are these external circumstances out here that are, they're powerful. That's what we live our life by. And we believe they cause us to react and have thoughts and feelings. And what we resist persists. So like they said in the cognitive psychology, that the brain is a predictive machine. It predicts reality based on past thoughts and emotions. It does not passively receive reality, but it constructs it. So we often think these events are happening to us, but what we're going to look more closely at is a lot of these events that are causing us great strife. There is a strong possibility that the feelings that we are having resulted in that event that you thought was the cause of it. So we have a feeling there all along, and we just don't feel it until this event made us aware of it. And we don't feel it until we create something in our experience to make us aware of it. This is why we're never a victim of anything. So this repressed emotion, believe it or not, has wisdom and neurosis in it. And the wisdom part of it is trying to express itself because it has some wisdom there, right? And we feel that we try to repress it because we feel we have no control over it, just like everything else in our life. And so it goes underground. I mean, look at Catholic priests, look at wars get started over someone feeling not powerful enough, or, insulted or disrespected. So this problem solving thing is a big deal. And it causes us to not only create problems, but to project anything that we don't know in our own psyche, we project. And I'm going to quote from Carl Jung, who is not a big fan of the problem solving approach either. Everything he learned through his own experience, which is the best knowledge. That's wisdom, right? And after he parted friends with Freud, he did a lot of work with he had near-death experiences and just a lot of really internal work he did on himself. And what he taught and wrote and helped his patients with was his whole new way of working with what he called coming to wholeness in ourselves. And he called this a journey of a psychic path to the spiritual, a movement into ourselves, which he characterized by meeting the shadow, seeing what we project onto people that we don't like, and what we don't know about ourselves, and even gifts that we don't know we have and we haven't developed, we project onto other people. And we can think of examples of that. And he had all this language about that he said, this is so interesting, that the psyche is by nature religious, and that the illness of our time is spiritual suppression. And of himself and all of his patients, he said, none are cured until they regain a religious attitude. And right before one of his near-death experiences, he wrote a whole lot, and he said, we already have a link with infinity. And if we don't embody ourselves, we waste this life. And so we could see that path to wholeness as growing up, and becoming an adult. We don't have to see everybody as our parent anymore, and conform. So what do wise beings do when they know who they are and they're seeing through all their stuff? They create what they want with their mind and their thoughts. And their actions are based on vision, which is what personally matters to them. And it's their true expression of themselves. And it's exciting and it's adventurous versus all these actions we take to attempt to regain emotional stability, So when you're problem solving, you're taking action to make something go away. And when you're creating, you are bringing something into being. And the mentality is totally different. The intentions are opposite. So we're going to do a creative process that Howard Badhand just, he is a master of, and that's why what he does is magical. we never look backwards in a spiritual path. We always look forward. And Pablo Picasso said that himself. What did he say? He said that the law of spirit is forward motion. And that is actually what warriorship is about. That, it's not about problem solving from the past and all that stuff. It refers to like realizing that we have power, dignity, and confidence in ourselves that allows us to cheer up. It allows us to develop a sense of vision. It allows us to succeed with what we want to do. And Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, my teacher's father, said that since warriorship is innate in human beings, the way to become a warrior is to see who and what we are as human beings and cultivate that. If we can look at ourselves clearly without hesitation and embarrassment, we find that we have tremendous strength and resources available to us constantly. So this is what we're going to do. I'm not going to go through the whole creative process here, but I'm going to explain to you why and how it is magical, because it's very different than any other creative process that you will ever find. And I'll tell you why. So in level 1, we've done this exercise that we have discovered the events of our past that's oftentimes we think we're doomed because of these beliefs and things that have happened to us. And we're going to see that we're not doomed. In fact, those are our strengths. And through the power of awareness of doing this exercise, we have found those. And not only that, it purifies all those seeds so that they don't poison us going forward. And so now we are going to look at how to be the creative force in our own life. And normally, when you think of action, we think of karma, and that is something that kind of appears to be inconsistent with this creative approach, because something that you do, every action you have has a reaction and a result, which is definite. But the act of creating with this approach that Howard Badhand has given me is that we basically realize that the past is over and that karma only extends to the present moment, and that we can turn a new sheet of paper, Lindsay, who's an artist, we can take a new canvas and miraculously, independently of cause and effect, we can transcend our circumstances, our history, by being the dominant creative force in our life. And magically, what happens is in that moment where you're turning a new sheet of paper, you're not trapped anymore by these previous actions. You don't have to extricate yourself from all these unwanted circumstances. And when you know who you are, which is this pure being, and you create what you want from that place, we actually bring into reality the play of our own life force. It's not like you're a channel for God or anything like that. It's our own power, our own individuality, our own life force that activates the human spirit. And what causes this to supersede karma, I mean, we could break it down structurally and say that these two forces, who you are and what you want, coming from that pure motivation, is like a surging river. It will go right there because it's mother going to child or child going to mother. There's nothing more powerful than the very source of life itself that is striving for expression through us. And, once we've made this basic fundamental choice to be who we are, then the meaning of life changes. And we're changing, the current reality. We take the current reality just like it is, and we have a vision for what we want to create. And these archetypes really help us to do that, because they're everything. So there's so much I could say about that, but I'm going to leave that for the class. And what happens is that in the beginning, when we're learning anything new like this, there's going to be obstacles. And so I'm going to go over in the class all these exercises for dealing with these obstacles. But once we learn this creative process, it, we'll make a fundamental choice. And whenever doubt or fear or something comes up, we make a secondary choice. And it's always, like a pivot, because we remember our fundamental choice and what we want to create from who we are. And it just makes it, everything gets funneled into where we're going and who we are. It's very, very, very powerful. So oftentimes we get stuck in life because we are externally oriented, and we think that there's all these problems out there that life is giving us, and we have to deal with them. And bravo if you can catch yourself feeling stuck, because this is how we give our power away. When we give our power away, we get stuck. It's like my cat here, because he's 21 years old. I give my power to him. I let him sit on the couch. I let him walk over me. It's just the same thing we do with fear. We give it our power. We go, oh, it's the boogeyman. It's like I can't move forward. I can't move back. And that is actually our wise inhibitions. Fear is never to be pushed through. Howard would say, honor your inhibitions. You can't push through fear, because fear is a form of aversion. And when we do that, we're creating angry karma, and it doesn't work either. And, and we also, because the purpose of fear is to prevent us from doing what we want to do, we can't let it prevent us from doing what we want to do. So there's an approach that we take, that we don't push through it, but we take a break and we come back to it and we metabolize it. And, that is a large part of what our world is about right now, is fear. There's fear and control. Control is a state of mind that's out of control, insecure and helpless. And when we're in control, we are basically fearful of our life, and we have no ground of friendliness to ourselves or anybody. And this is not being the creative force in your life, and this is what our corporate America is a lot about. But Howard also had ways of dealing with that. So, and hope and fear are the flip side of the same coin. They're like wings of a bird. They try to flap us to get someplace, but there's nowhere to go. Now is eternal. That is also part of the warriorship things. And then desire is what makes the world go round. We can't imagine a world without desire. It's the most prevalent energy in our world, and we're motivated by it. But the problem with desire for creating is it makes us go in circles, because desire says, I desire this. And what that means is I really want it, but I don't have it. And desire is insatiable, and it creates karma. And the lesson I learned about desire, which was so beautiful, from Howard Badhand, I was driving back from Sundance, having done a vision quest with him. And people come from all over the world to be cured by him, and he does ceremonies for them. And he told me on the way back from Rosebud that he was really repulsed by all the people coming to him, and they're always asking him how to find their soulmate. And he said, don't people know if they just drop their desire and craving that it's right there, and that is it. I mean, it's really, that is it. Desire actually is saying it's outside of me. And that is a poverty mentality. So we're going to use the creative method, and I have so much here that I'm bypassing. I'm just going to summarize where we're going with this, is that, so basically we have these infallible methods augmented by Vajrayana Tantra that we will use to create what we want and to communicate in our relationships. And we will not be coming from hope and fear. We will be supported by the depth of the universe. That's hexagram 1. When you let go of all that's inferior and degrading and you become your true self, everything supports you. You become a warrior, and a warrior is someone who's creating the energy of bravery. And we will collaborate into existence the compassion that we have for ourselves and for our partner, which is wisdom, by the way. And there's nothing permanent that we can create from the relative world or hope and fear, but this is permanent. And we will take that blank sheet of paper and we're not going to think about what others have done. We're not going to think about what's possible under the circumstances or what process we need to do to bring it into, it is our life force seeking its own fulfillment. We've taken down the retaining walls in our mind. We've created a structure that flows from our, old beliefs into our new creative process. And it is the most effective use of structural engineering on the face of the earth. And once, we get used to this process, it will be the only process that we use. And this is how we overcome our past and are not condemned by the things that have happened to us. And we've done this by our awareness and our vision. And that, we're using our wisdom to create what we want. The currency of wisdom is overriding our karma. And the difference between this system and every other system for creating things is that we are creating from wisdom and who we are with having made a fundamental choice. All the other ones, the person who is creating is the person who believes that they can't have what they want and that they're stuck and all of that stuff. So we'll bypass all the setbacks. And then what we do when we've created what we want, and we're going to use this process to create, you'll see how beautiful it is. Then what we want to do is we want to collaborate with our partner. And this is going to be completely different than what we're used to doing, which is reacting to, from the dynamic. But now we'll be able to merge our creations, not by losing ourselves like we have in the past, but by coming to a creation that we both share in common through collaboration. Collaboration is impossible to do until you know who you are. Most of us do horse trading and rug sales and negotiation, with an arm's length transaction. And we go back and forth, say, I've got this used car, I'll sell it to you for 3,000. What do you think? This is not collaboration. And collaboration can only be done when you're whole and you know who you are and what you want. It's the same thing. So we're going to collaborate from this place of completeness, wholeness, not from trying to get from the other person what we think we're missing, because we've already created that and we know who we are. And so now what we want to do is join with our partner as rulers of a kingdom to see the world and ourselves as an adventure. And we're excited to create the life we want with the skills of collaboration and the inspiration of this creative process. So you're going to end this course in a completely different stance than you started. And, my teacher asked me to do this and I didn't do this, so I'll do it now. Let's say, he wanted me to have you contemplate for a second that just this truth. Our world, our relationship, and our view of ourself are created by concepts and beliefs, and we believe them. Therefore, if you change or let go of concepts, you will manifest a different reality, different appearances. We could contemplate that for a second. Okay. And I quote, when we create from who we are, a pure being, it's real. We will be in tune with the nature of reality. We will be helped from the depths of the universe, and we will have no barriers, concept, or doubt. And we'll manifest what we want by visualizing with the sixth consciousness, which is our life force. So there you have it. And I want to open it up for any questions that you guys have. And I know it's late, so you don't have to stay if you don't want to. Thank you for really for having the stamina to come and not just sit back and watch this on YouTube or something. It's much more powerful when you're in person like this. Any any questions, anybody? You guys are a quick study.
Yes, I do have a quick question. So, as you and I know, I'll most likely be doing this course alone. How
Okay.
how does that affect kind of the work towards the end when I'm supposed to
Yeah.
be collaborating?
So don't worry, there's going to be two other people who are doing this alone. And one of those two people are only doing it alone because they believe that this course is going to help them with money. Because when I told her about it, she's not in a relationship. She said, God, if I did that course, I would know how to, and it's so true because the dynamic is, the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So how you'll do that is in every aspect of our life, Lindsay, we have somebody that we have to collaborate with, and I, I think that I gave a big talk to the women's bar, the professional women, and they wanted to know how to negotiate. And I gently weaned them away from that. And I said, that's the ape instinct. What you really want to learn is this, superhuman instinct of being who you are and asking for what you want. And it will be disarming. It's like, it's not a strategy, but it is really how you get whatever you want in your life because nobody can do it, and so you being the very professional woman that you are going to be in circles. And you can use this with your boss. You can use it with your partner. You're going to be able to use it with him no matter where he is, whether he does this course or not. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, you got it. Anything else, do you think? I mean, I have so much more material, but this is all for the course. It's so good to meet you, Harry. I've been talking to Harry. She's in Vermont. I've been talking to her for over the last several months and I never saw her face. This is so nice to see her face.
It's nice to see your face too.
Yes, yes. And I bet you're like over a big hump in your life, right?
Well, I'm close.
Okay.
I guess for me, part of why I'm interested in the course is just I feel like I'm in a place of big transition.
Yes.
And I'm beginning to recognize the dynamic that I had in my previous relationship.
Yes.
I don't want to replicate that dynamic. But I want to, now I'm afraid. And I'm afraid of my life post divorce. And
Yes.
I'm afraid of the future. And I'm afraid of not knowing who I am or what I want. And I guess it seems like the course could help me.
You are right on track. You are so on track. I mean, that tells me you're right where you need to be. That is the attitude that anybody would have if they took seriously their past relationship and they're in a new one and they really don't want to repeat a pattern. Those
Right.
are the thing that you will not have to have is fear. The fear is an unnecessary kind of thing, but it's normal and natural. And I think you are so perfectly well, it's auspicious that this is happening right now, because this will really, really help you to not just unconsciously, like we all do, repeat these dynamics over and over again. It's if, we're wound up based on this conditioning to just go out and do it again, really, it's hard to prevent unless you do what I've taken a lifetime to try to know how to do and use the big guns to actually help us with this. And those big guns will give us the blessings that will help. It's not just I'm a student, as you know. I've not I am nowhere near anywhere enlightened, but I get more and more closer glimpse of it every day, so I'm on the path just like you, and I'm learning this the same time you are. And so I find this to be so powerful and so necessary for everything, you know. It's like we give our power. It's how we're wound up to do everything. I mean, I'm not kidding you. When people come in and everybody, I ask them what they want, and they go, what? We thought you would tell us what we're entitled to or whatever. You know, nobody can tell you what they want. It's like, it's so hard for most people to know what they want because of our conditioning. You know, another big part of our conditioning is don't do that, don't do that, don't go across the street, don't wake up your father, don't do that. You know, they've had babies that have been little microscopic microphones in them, and they monitor what's been said to them for years. And 90% of what's said to children growing up is don't. You know, it's all the no's. And so we are very much conditioned to think we can't, you know, and so this is a conditioning that psychology is ill-equipped to deal with, you know, because like I said, I've had clients who come to me for marriage mediation, and they do the incredible work of seeing their dynamic, and then they even take the space and they have the ahas about what's causing them to do that, you know, but then they just go back and do it again, you know, and I'm like, what is going on here? And is there something more hardwired than just going to therapy and understanding, oh, I see, I have this low self-esteem, and I don't think I can make it in a relationship, so I sabotage them or whatever. You can see those, you can have all those awarenesses, but it is this, you know, for lack of a better word, it's this problem solving orientation where we believe that this world is more powerful than us, and that it has the power to dictate how we should react, you know. And it's really about taking that power back here and realizing that we are the creative force in our own lives, you know, that really you'll see this, it'll start to change your whole demeanor about how you look at things. It's not like, oh God, now what's next? You know, you wake up in the morning and go, oh no, what is the world bringing to me today? It's like, what is my vision? You know, what do I want to create? And all this other stuff is not real. You know, it's really not. It's like what we bring our awareness to is what we create. You know, awareness has the power to create, and it has also the power to destroy. And we destroy, the only way we can destroy is by seeing through these things, you know, because like I said, you can't ever get rid of a concept. You know, it's a problem that, you know, crops up whenever the ingredients get triggered, you know, and so we really come back to who we are, and we avoid all that negativity by, you know, trying to explain it and pacify it, and, you know, make superficial changes, because if that is not accompanied by a personal change here in the way we're viewing the world, it will never do anything. Do you see what I'm saying? We're changing ourselves, you know. And in the wisdom traditions, they say you put leather on the bottom of your shoe instead of over the whole earth, you know. And that's, you know, that's kind of what we're doing here, is we're changing the projector of the film. It's so wonderful to see you guys. I tell you, this is so
It's
wonderful.
wonderful to see you.
I haven't seen Timothy. Oh my God, Timothy and I go way back. And then there was like this way big period of time where there was no contact, no seeing, and now we're seeing each other again. This is so cool.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Timothy is a musician. You will like this stuff. You know, musicians are creative beings. They bring into being, you know, I mean, even though we could say that Beethoven couldn't have done what he did without having like this perceptual intuition from the gods or whatever, but it didn't exist before him, and it doesn't exist now. You know, it's our own individual creativity that brings this stuff into being, you know. And so you'll appreciate it if Harry tells you about it. You'll really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm appreciating it already in my own experience. um, the the world as it is, or the contemporary economic reality, does not value artists.
Right.
And I spent a good part of my life waiting for the world to change, or for me to
Mhm.
change the world.
Yes.
And then, what's actually helped me and has helped me be successful in my art is knowing what it is for me and what's true about it for me. And then the world met me there,
Yes.
and then people came to me and valued who I was, but I first had to value myself.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so like what you're saying resonates with my actual experience, and it's not just a bunch of, you know, there's a lot of people saying a lot of things,
Yes.
social media and all that,
Yeah.
and you didn't pay me to say this. This is my, because you couldn't pay me enough.
That is really helpful. That is really so confirming of everything that I'm, doing and believing in and wanting everybody to become aware of. You're a living example of it.
Yeah, yeah, and it actually just, it was actually David Rome who listened to me talk about how painful it was to be a musician,
Mm-hmm.
and he just heard me, and just having somebody hear me
Yes.
allowed me to be confident. Like, it's not my problem. I know what I am. I don't
Exactly.
have to explain it to anybody else. You know.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't mean to go on, but
That's really helpful. I really appreciate you saying that. It's helpful to all of us. And
mm,
because Lindsay over here is an artist. She's a painter.
ooh,
But I'm sure if she's still listening to this, she would really appreciate hearing that, huh, Lindsay?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm in a big inflection point in my career. So yeah, absolutely.
Great, great. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be an artist, and artists, the only thing artists don't know is that they should apply their artistic talents to their whole life. It's not just in art. It's like, really, we are the creative force in our life. We really are. And we give it away, you know, and it's almost like when we know who we are, it's a boundary of self. It's the only boundary we need. We know who we are, and we don't worry about what, they say about the stock market or this or that. It's like we are doing who we are, and being, you can't go wrong. You can never go wrong if you're true to yourself. There's no way you can ever go wrong. So this is so nice, so wonderful. Thank you for those very inspiring words.